An older woman named Sarah said this to me one afternoon while we were preparing food for a church gathering. She was 73 years old, had been married for 54 years, and she said it with the absolute certainty of someone who had built an entire life on this principle. She said it like it was not an opinion. She said it like it was a law of nature, the same way you might say water is wet or fire is hot. She said, "A wife's first work is her husband's satisfaction, Hannah. Everything else comes after that." I was 25 years old when she said it. I had been married for 6 years, and I remember the exact quality of silence that followed her statement, because in that silence I understood something I had been struggling to articulate my entire married life. I understood that I had not been making a series of individual choices. I understood that I had been following a blueprint that had been handed to me, and that blueprint said very clearly that my purpose was not to flourish or to grow or to become fully myself. My purpose was to be satisfactory to my husband. My name is Hannah. I grew up Old Order Amish in Holmes County, Ohio. I married at 19 and left at 27. On this channel, I tell the stories that lived behind closed farmhouse doors, the ones I was never supposed to repeat out loud. Today, I want to talk about a single sentence that contained an entire worldview and what it costs a woman to live inside that worldview for 6 years, believing it is simply the way things are supposed to be. Before I tell you what Sarah said and what it meant, I need to explain what she was responding to. We were at a church gathering preparing food with a group of other women. My daughter had come with me, and at one point she spilled something on her dress. It was a small thing, really, a little bit of gravy on the fabric. But I remember the way my stomach tightened when it happened. I remember the immediate thought that went through my head. Jonas will notice that she has been here. He will know that I brought her, even though he had said something days before about how the children were getting underfoot at these gatherings. He had not explicitly told me not to bring her, but the preference had been clear, and I had been thinking about that preference all morning, weighing it against the fact that my daughter wanted to come, that it would be good for her to see other families, that a small amount of supervision at a church gathering was reasonable. I'd been trying to balance my daughter's needs against my husband's preferences, and the weights on the scale were not equal. Sarah watched me clean the gravy off my daughter's dress with more anxiety than the situation warranted. She watched me worry about whether Jonas would notice. And she said what she said. She said that a wife's first work is her husband's satisfaction. She said that when I understood this, really understood it deep in my bones, many other things would become clear. I want to be honest about what I felt when she said that. I felt first a kind of recognition, because on some level I had already known this. I had already organized my entire life around it. But hearing it said out loud by a woman I respected made it real in a way it had not been real before. It made it impossible to pretend I was simply trying to be a good wife. I was trying to be satisfactory to my husband. That was the whole point. But I also felt something else. I felt a kind of despair, because I realized in that moment that there was no end point. There was no level of attentiveness that would ever be sufficient, no amount of effort that would ever be enough, because satisfaction is not a fixed target. It is a moving one. It changes based on mood, based on circumstance, based on whether a husband has had a good day at work or a bad one, based on whether he is feeling generous or critical. What Sarah was describing was not a job with clear parameters. It was not something you could study and perfect. It was an endless, impossible task. Be satisfactory. Make him satisfied. Do it every day. Do it without knowing exactly what satisfaction looks like on any given day. Do it without complaint. Do it without pointing out that you are doing it. Do it as though you are not trying at all, as though it simply comes naturally to you, this constant calibration of your own behavior in response to someone else's needs. I think about what it means to spend 6 years, or 54 years as Sarah had, operating from this principle. I think about what it does to a woman to make someone else's satisfaction her primary work, her first work, the thing that comes before everything else, including her own survival. In the years after Sarah said that to me, I started to notice how completely I had organized my life around it. I got up earlier than my husband so that I could have his coffee ready exactly when he came downstairs. I learned to read his face in the morning and adjust my own behavior accordingly. If he looked tired or irritated, I became smaller, quieter, less present, so as not to add to his burden. If he looked content, I could breathe a little easier, knowing that my performance had been adequate that day. I managed the household in ways designed to make his life as comfortable as possible. I made sure the children were quiet during certain hours. I made sure the meals were the way he preferred them. I made sure that when he came home, the house felt like a place where his needs would be met without him having to ask. I made sure that when he wanted physical intimacy, I was available, regardless of how I felt. I made sure that when he wanted to be left alone, I disappeared. And I did all of this while also managing the children, growing the food, preserving the food, cleaning the house, mending the clothes, birthing the children, recovering from birthing the children, working in the garden, tending the animals, and 1,000 other tasks that made up the work of being an Amish wife and mother. But Sarah had said something very specific. She had said my first work is his satisfaction, not my children's well-being, not my own health, not the practical management of the household, his satisfaction. What that meant in practice was that when these things came into conflict, which they did constantly, my husband's satisfaction won. When I was exhausted and he wanted intimacy, his satisfaction won. When the children needed me and he wanted attention, his satisfaction won. When I was sick and he wanted supper prepared in a particular way, his satisfaction won. When I was struggling and he was indifferent, his satisfaction still won, because my indulgence in my own struggle was a failure to prioritize his comfort. I think about how this principle compounds over years, because once you accept that your first work is someone else's satisfaction, you stop expecting your own needs to matter. You stop asking for things. You stop even clearly identifying what you need, because needing something has become synonymous with failing to prioritize someone else's satisfaction. I think about Sarah, 73 years old, having spent 54 years perfecting the art of prioritizing her husband's satisfaction. I wonder what she gave up in those years. I wonder what she might have been if she had not organized her entire existence around making sure another person was satisfied. I wonder if she ever asked herself whether it was worth it. When I was in therapy, years after leaving, I tried to explain this principle to my counselor. I tried to make her understand what it meant to spend years believing that your first work was someone else's satisfaction. She was quiet for a long time. Then she asked me a question I could not answer at the time. She asked, "What would happen if you prioritized your own satisfaction? What would happen if your first work was yourself?" I did not know how to answer that question. The idea seemed almost obscene, the suggestion that I could put my own satisfaction first. It seemed selfish. It seemed wrong. It seemed like the exact opposite of what a wife was supposed to do. But my therapist kept asking me that question in different ways, week after week. What would happen if your needs mattered as much as his? What would happen if your satisfaction was as important as his? What would happen if you stopped making your first work the satisfaction of another person and started making it the satisfaction of yourself? The answer I came to understand was that I would have to leave, because staying in a marriage organized around the principle that my first work was my husband's satisfaction meant accepting permanently that I did not matter as much as he did. It meant accepting that my body, my time, my energy, my presence, all of these things existed primarily to serve his comfort. I want to say something to anyone watching this who grew up hearing this principle, who grew up believing that your first work was someone else's satisfaction, that your purpose was to make another person happy, comfortable, pleased with you, that your value was determined by how well you could calibrate your behavior to someone else's preferences. That is not true. Your first work is yourself. Your satisfaction matters. Your body belongs to you. Your time belongs to you. Your energy is yours to allocate. The fact that you have been taught otherwise does not make it true. The fact that an older woman told you it was true does not make it true. The fact that your entire community organized itself around this principle does not make it true. Sarah, 73 years old, had made peace with this principle. She had built a life on it. She had accepted it so completely that it seemed to her like simple truth. And maybe, from inside her life, it felt like the only way to survive. Maybe the alternative, which was to demand that her own satisfaction matter as much as her husband's, felt too dangerous to contemplate. Maybe it was easier to simply accept the principle and spend your life perfecting the art of satisfying someone else. But I could not do that, and I did not have to. If you grew up believing that your first work was someone else's satisfaction, if you learned to organize your entire existence around making another person comfortable, if you accepted that your value was determined by how well you could please someone else, I see you. You can choose something different. Your satisfaction is not a luxury. It is not selfish. It is a basic human right. And your first work, your actual first work, is taking care of yourself. This is my story. If it stayed with you, tell me in the comments, and subscribe if you want to keep hearing the truth from behind the prayer cap.